All right, guys, welcome back. So I hope you had a nice break. Before the break, we started getting into some pretty heavy concepts, didn't we? This idea of what is true versus what is really true. If there's such a thing as ultimate truth with a capital T, and we can actually get at it, then most people don't in their day-to-day lives. Then we may be able to approximate some more universal truth, which is great, but that's the domain more of philosophers and etymologists and all kinds of other, and epistemologists and stuff like that. It's not something we need to concern ourselves as much as hypnotists, except to realize that what most people think is true and real is only true or real because they happen to believe it so. And by mimicking the same life processes that created that belief in the first place, you get to not only dissolve what was true, you could also recreate something new that hasn't been true yet. Do you get the idea of this? We're going to do a series of exercises towards this point now, and to make it a little bit practical. I'm going to let you be a little creative with this. There's lots of ways of getting to a yes, and we've only really uncovered a crude one so far. We'll evolve this as a style, don't worry. But before we do that, I want to get you a little bit creative. With your partner inside your group, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to talk to them, ask them to close their eyes, and then just present to them things that are true. But the things that are true will be of a specific quality or a specific kind. I'd like you to start off with a mindset that you'd like to have your partner drink more water in general. You'll realize that drinking water overall is a good thing, yes? There is very, 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 very few cases in our historical timeline where people have drank too much water. It's usually an accident or something else, like falling off a ship. As a rule, again, in our culture, we tend to be dehydrated more than anything. So everyone, as a rule, can tend to do well at drinking more water. Let me just take a time out here. Are these things true? In terms of the current status of medical science, they are true with a medium-sized T. Whether they're true as absolute facts, well, who knows? Nutritional science is constantly changing, but I think it's true enough that we can accept it as useful. Yes. The more important issue is: did you all accept these ideas overall? Yes. Did anyone feel like, no, that's just not true? Who the hell needs to drink water? Water, no good for you. Never touched stuff myself. Well, unless it's competently diluted with alcohol, and preferably no water, just the alcohol. But essentially, I want you to just get them to close their eyes and talk about anything that relates to the idea of water and the idea of drinking water in a way that you will collect yeses in any way whatsoever. It's wholly up to you how you do it. You may just want to list facts like water exists. And your body needs water, it uses water. I think we can get close to a capital T on that one, right? That human beings don't survive long without water. Maybe your spirit can, but your body definitely will not, right? That's pretty much as close to a capital T as we can get so far, right? I want you to list out as many things they will absolutely accept that are related to water as you can in 30 seconds. And then they'll have their go, and then we'll come back, we'll talk some more, and we'll add something to this. Do you understand this? Note, I do not need you to actually persuade them that drinking water would be a good idea. In fact, I will strongly encourage you to not even attempt to get them to accept the idea that they will be drinking more water. That is not the purpose right now. All that we are doing is collecting yeses in relationship to water. Do you understand what I'm asking for you to do? Yes? It will literally be just 30 seconds apiece, so really don't spend too long on this. Close your eyes, go into a trance, and listen, and then just list yeses, at the end of which, bring them back, and it's your turn. This is only a fragment of where we're going with this. Sound good? All right, guys, so we're exploring this idea of trueness, and did you come up with some interesting ways of talking about water, or at least something associated with the idea of water, that happens to list true, quote-unquote, facts that are true with a small t, yes? Let's have the mic ready, please. Where's the mic? There it is. Just what kind of things did you come up with? Very quickly, we'll just throw them out, and then we'll carry on. So what kind of truths relating to water did you come up with? All right, just stand up. We'll get a mic to you. Just stand right up, guys. First come, first served, and we'll go back afterwards. Go ahead.
Just that the body's comprised of about 70%
Excellent.
water.
Yep. So people may or may not know the exact number, but they'll be close enough to like, yeah, I'll believe that. Go ahead.
We're immersed in water from the very second we're conceived.
We're immersed in water from the very second well, before we're even born, right? Over here.
Water cleanses you.
Water cleanses you. You see, now let me ask you this. Is that a truth that most people will accept? Maybe, maybe not. It's more of a risky one. However, if you and it's specifically to do with the language, because cleansing could mean different things to different people, right? Like a spiritual cleansing, etc. However, most people wash in water. That's true enough that everyone will accept it, right? No, I didn't say everyone washes in water, because not everyone washes. And if you have someone who wants to be very precise, they'll go, well, I know, there's some people who don't really wash at all. Do you see where I'm going with this? However, you just hit on exactly where we're going next. We've talked about things, you talk with your partners about things in relation to water that are absolutely correct, yes? Overall, do they have more of a positive slant or more of a negative slant overall? Positive. So I want you to encourage that aspect of it. So only speak about water when you do the exercise again. Close your eyes. List some facts about water, some that you heard maybe from them, some you've heard from others, or some you came up with yourself. List a few facts about water, but especially those that are in positive in nature, right? Like you're made up of water. Most people use it to wash and stay healthy with it. From the moment of your creation, you were surrounded by mostly water and so on, right? Then, this is the interesting part, I want you to start shifting to ideas that are not necessarily going to be accepted as true, but they are plausible enough. They're not really going to argue over it. So there's a kind of idea that if you just, if you talk it to someone who's a miserable so-and-so, they go, yeah, well, I don't know about that. It's not really true. I don't know, right? So it's plausible enough that they're less likely to argue over it, but it's not necessarily true enough that most people will accept it without question. Do you get the idea of this? Yeah? Do you all have something like that in mind? No? So I hesitate to tell you some things just because I'll give you some examples, but only on the understanding that you can't use them. Is that okay with you guys? Because it's more important that you start thinking about this than that you just copy, because this is an exercise more designed to get your thinking in the right place than it is about just listing stuff out, right? Anyone can read lists. This is not the operative element here. So, did you know that most people are dehydrated? Is that true or not? Depending on who you talk to, it may be medically true or true enough, but it's plausible enough that most people will not argue over it. Does that make sense? Now notice how you're sitting here going like, maybe, maybe not, kind of, yeah, could have, right? Compare that to, you know that water exists, right? Hey, why not go for easy wins? And when I talk about water, I mean more than just things like rain or the ocean. We all need water to survive, don't we? And even those of us who don't really drink much water are drinking water in other forms, and sodas, and taking it in through fruit juice and stuff like that, even just fruit. Did you know that most people are chronically dehydrated? As a result of dehydration, your brain power actually slows down. And your body's ability to cleanse itself, to rid yourself of toxins and stuff like that, is diminished. Which means that most people are unhealthier and less intelligent because they don't drink enough water. Did you know that? Can you feel something happening inside you right now? A little pressure developing? I haven't done anything with it yet, but would it be fair to say that a certain amount of pressure started to develop inside you somewhere, right? Do you understand the nature of this exercise? Now remember the deal we made. You may not use any of the examples I just gave you. I know. It's much better if you find something more of your own ideas. And remember, it doesn't have to be true. It just has to be plausible enough that tagged onto the end of things that are absolutely true, or at least are going to be accepted as true by these people, well, it'll have a certain effect, and that's the more important part. Do you understand the exercise, yes? All right, guys, I'm going to give you 45 seconds, so a minute and a half in total. Off you go. That's just an idea, or if you like to say in the hypnosis community, just a suggestion. So over to you guys. What happened? What did you notice happening this second time round when you started going from true to more plausible, but not necessarily true? What kind of things happened? Just put your hands up. Stand up.
One of the things I noticed is that it's actually much easier to invent the paces if you already have the outcome, so you can just build up to if you know where you're going.
Thank you. This goes right back to the two reasons people blank out. They either try too hard to do too much and become self-critical in the critical factor sense, or they have no purpose in mind. It's very difficult to be persuasive when you have nothing to persuade them about, right? But as soon as you have a purpose in mind, do you notice how it's easier to find things that fit? Why? Because your mind is a meaning-making machine. And as soon as you have a purpose in place, things will be slotted in by it. It's not 100%, no, nothing's 100%, but it's good enough that you can develop it over time and become really good at it. Does that make sense? So thanks for that. What other things did you guys notice? Both as the hypnotist and the clients, just standing up.
As a hypnotist, I felt incongruent when I didn't really believe in what I was saying myself.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, felt fake.
I agree. So this is an important aspect. As a client, who was your client, your subject? Did you hear it? Or you just like, no, I'll go with it?
I went with it.
You're going to went with it, okay. This is an important aspect. Notice that before, whilst as a hypnotist, we'll come to you in a second. Jacob over here. Jacob? Whilst overall, as hypnotists, our material, the subject matter that we work with is the idea of reality, what is true. We turn things that were true into untrue and things that were untrue into true, or at least true enough to be useful, right? One of the dangers that we run into is becoming what's called a sophist, which is someone who will argue anything that's just convenient, who will even win arguments because they're convenient, but they don't really believe in anything. That's a very dangerous thing to do. And this leads us to the idea of ethics in the influence game in general, right? You're here in the UK. Do you remember who here was around in the 1980s when they had the double glazing salesman? Anyone? There's a few groans in the room. Why are you groaning? So for those of you who don't know, especially if you weren't in the UK in the 1980s, there was a phenomenon here, one of these little weird bubble things, where double glazing, which is this, these two panes of windows that are both very good at heat insulation and sound insulation and so on, they became cheap to be mass-produced and installed and so on. So a bunch of companies came overnight, cowboys who would promise you the sky, but delivered absolutely nothing, very bad service. And they would use very poor sales tactics, very unethical sales tactics to get a signature, and then it would be impossible to get out of these contracts that you were forced into signing. It was a long, unpleasant story. Now, the 80s rock on, it works for a while, some people make a killing. Then, as an industry, something very strange happens. Suddenly, no one wants double glazing anymore. As soon as someone comes in and says, hey, how about double glazing? The next thing that happens is they hear the sound of a door slamming, and they look up, and there, sure enough, is a door standing right in front of them, where a person used to be. Why? They've been rumbled. They've lost trust. So whilst you can get to short-term gains with unethical means, long-term, sophism destroys any form of credibility and trust you have, which means it destroys your relationship. And given that anything that you do that's worth influencing, whether it's a personal relationship or a business relationship, is something that becomes more useful to you over time, more profitable both in the emotional sense and the business sense and so on, why on earth would you go through all the trouble of finding someone to have that relationship with, then to only systematically destroy it by essentially lying to them or being inconsistent in some way? Do you get the idea here? So the price that you pay for unethical behavior in general is very, very high. A friend of mine actually did a study for a while where he followed a troupe of like con artists doing their thing. And it's fascinating because they kind of like each other. But the weird thing is, amongst each other, they have this almost blood oath they cannot cheat each other because they need some friends. Outside of their own community, they have no one. They can only go through that like locusts. They go somewhere, they really burn up all their bridges and have to go somewhere else and so on. It's a pretty awful life if you think about it. And the irony is, if they actually followed up, if there was more truth in what they were saying and doing, well, they'd have very happy people they can carry on for a lifetime doing great things with. You get the idea here? There's an important thing, because as a rule, there is a price that you pay for abusing your skills. And this is especially important in hypnosis. There's an old saying, I'm not sure entirely who came up with this idea, but it might be Milton Erickson. I heard it from my mentor, John Overturf, which is that hypnosis is anything but a casual relationship. And in the same way, has anyone here had a very deep, meaningful relationship with another human being? Imagine that person betrayed that trust, did something awful. You'd be very happy about that, wouldn't you? You'd go, oh, don't worry about it, it's all right. We'll get past it, it's no big deal. Would you do that? No. For the most part, to get someone's trust tends to be relatively easy. To get someone's, a lot of trust, a little more effort, but it's still relatively straightforward for most people. Some have more issues with the idea of trust. To get someone's trust back is very hard. And as a rule, the deeper the relationship is, the harder it will be. So not only is your payback 10 times worse, but to repair any damage you've done is 10 times harder. You get the idea? So hypnosis is a double-edged sword. When you're doing it using it as a force for good, your relationships will blossom. People will like you more, they want to hang around with you more. If you're running a business, it's a good thing, charge them. There's a great book by there's a guy who's a little kooky, but he's great. The book title alone just sold me. It was called The Trick to Money is Having Some. It's all about wealth building using some spiritual means and so on. But one of the ideas that I really liked about him was there's a really simple formula for becoming wealthy. Would you like to know what it is? Yeah. And I really like it, actually. It kind of has informed most of our business, believe it or not. And that is, you work on yourself as a person so you're just so cool, people want to hang out with you. They just want to be near you. They just like your vibe. And when they show up, charge them. Right? I think it's very funny. But the flip side of this is equally important. So you have this tremendous tool that enriches the relationship. It can build a lot of trust because, if you're influencing someone in a way that's going to be positive for their life as well as yours, well, so much the better, right? Who wouldn't want to shake someone's hand saying, thank you so much for changing my mind about such and such, if it's just made your life better than you could have considered before, right? The opposite is also true. If they start to regret what you have done or regret listening to you, you now lose trust rapidly. And because if you use hypnosis and abuse the nature of the intimate relationship that's been built by it, your payback will be equally severe. Just as with the example we just had of the person that you had a very close relationship to, if you broke the bridge there. Do you get the idea here? So there's a kind of built-in ethical safety check into what we're doing. I personally believe that hypnosis is a tremendous force for good. I also know for a fact that most people, everyone in the world, has used conversational hypnosis at one point or another with another human being without realizing it. You all have, right? As we develop some of these skills more, you'll see it, especially when we get to the more conversational type trances. The problem is they're random, so when you want them to be there, most people don't know how to make them be there. The other problem is, because they're random, sometimes they're being used as a force for good, and sometimes, even with the best intention in mind, they're being used as a force for harm. It's kind of a hypnotic curse. And that's where a lot of unpleasant things happen, right? Think of this classic motivational speech from a parent or a teacher. If you don't get your homework done, you'll never amount to anything, and you'll be poor, and your life will suck, and it'll be terrible, and so on. So you better do your homework right. That's a very useful set of ideas to have in someone, isn't it? It has, ideas like that, especially reinforced over time, has destroyed many lives. And people don't realize that given the right set of context, which is what we're exploring right now, what you say and how you say it can totally transform a life for good or ill. And if you don't know these skills, if you don't know what we're talking about right now, then the risk that you run is that unintentionally you can do great harm at a point in time when you didn't even mean to, you were trying to help. Do you understand what I'm saying here? So, the ethics has a multiple aspects to it. Burying your head in the sand won't help because at one point or another, you will use these skills. And if you don't know that you're using them, well then, it's very hard to know whether or not you're using them as a force for good or not. If you're using them as a hypnotic curse, by accident or on purpose, but I'll assume most people will do it by accident, there will be a terrible price that you pay. You have no idea the amount of people that contact me telling me sob stories about how they've destroyed their family and they're trying desperately to get them back again after having some great argument or other, not realizing the very things they're trying to do to get them back is destroying it even further. You understand what I'm saying here? And they're trying to fix it. What is the one thing I can say to fix this all? And the answer is, that's not the way it works. It's about who you're becoming and how you're engaging with people to allow this stuff to evolve. Does that kind of make sense? So yes, right now, training exercise, no problem. You don't really believe it, by all means, just do it for the practice element. In time, however, what you'll develop is a very fine sense of what is it that you do think is actually true and valuable, and enough respect for the other person's point of view about the world and so on, something we'll develop more as we go on, that you will find enough of a, higher version of truth that fits into the kind of processes that we're talking about here that will lead to the kind of outcomes that we want to have had. And in this case, that someone ends up drinking more water. Although you realize, of course, it's just a simple construct to develop a skill that's actually practical. Does it make sense to you guys? Does that kind of address some of your concerns there? Because they're actually very important. That's an important idea you brought up. Oh, it was just what you felt, no concern. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to rant instead. But it was an important thing because, we're starting to get to the point where I hope you're beginning to realize that the potential of what you are capable of is vast. The influence you can have over other people is huge. And with that kind of power comes a great responsibility, right? And abusing that responsibility, which will mean you end up paying a price. And the price is one that you probably will not want to pay in any relationship that is worth investing these skills into in the first place, right? So, on to happier themes. So far, we started off by just a simple little chance induction. Whether you need it or not is another question. You've listed out things that are true. You've started going on to things that are plausible. What I want you to do next, I'm going to give you a little bit longer now, I'm going to give you a minute apiece, is I want you to start talking about things related to water, of course, that are positive, that are absolutely true. Begin to intersperse inside of those truisms, those truths, with a little t, ideas that are plausible enough that will be accepted, but then go back to yeses. So true, plausible, true, you just mix them up a bit, right? As you continue, go towards more plausible and less true. your aim by the end of this particular version of the exercise is, again, not to persuade them of anything yet. The aim you're looking for is the final step in this process is to lead them to something that, had they heard it without anything else going on, they would have thought was highly improbable. Allow me to give you an example, but only on the understanding, once again, that you will not use this one. Is that okay with you guys? No? Shut up, you do the exercise. Will that be better for you guys? All right, I'll tell you what. If you want the opportunity to use what I'm about to say, but of course don't want to hear me say it, please just plug your ears now and go la, 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 la. For the rest of you, an example of what is quite improbable, at least at this point, unless I did any warm-up act for that, is the idea that you can drink 2 liters of water each day, or 8 large glasses of water, 8 pints, I think that's more like 4 liters, isn't it? All right. 2 4 liters of water, something like that, something in that range, every day, and love it. In fact, if you weren't drinking 2 to 4 liters of water a day, you would absolutely miss it. Now, who here is thinking like, yeah, nah, I don't buy it so much? Anyone? Put your hands up. Right? I know, I specifically chose it because it's counter to your experience. Right? So your job is to, in a minute, cycle through what's true, start seeding in ideas that are plausible, and end up with an idea that would have been highly improbable or would have been rejected had you presented it outside of the context of what we're doing, and just notice what results that you have from that. Do you understand the nature of this exercise? You only have 60 seconds, so it's not like you have loads of time for it, but it should be enough time to get that cycle going. So 1 minute apiece, same partner, different partner, I don't really care, off you go. So how was that experience? Just go ahead and just give me some results. How was that as a hypnotist, and more importantly, as a subject hearing these ideas? This is the interactive part. Go ahead.
It's funny just how much more plausible something that is even ridiculously implausible sounds after just something else that's more plausible than not.
So once again, very eloquently put, you've discovered the power of moving from the corridor, which is kind of, yeah, maybe, into the yes room. And you notice the truth is more a question of habit and mental habit, at least in the way that most people understand it. It's just how we operate. Now, does it make it more true? No, there's things that you can be more true. There's other elements required for truthfulness with a capital T to be present. However, we don't have to concern ourselves too much with that when we're talking about the influencing game, provided we keep this idea of ethics in the back of our mind, which we've just discussed, right? What else did you guys notice? Over here? Jakov's doing some exercise today. Just stand up and we'll get him to you.
I realised that I had the end idea and I had the beginning idea. I didn't really have anything to fill in with, so I was sort of improvising. And what I noticed was by the end, I'd actually managed to do a really good job of convincing myself of what I'd said. I'm not quite sure about my subject, but that was something that I felt, and I was thinking about it afterwards and thinking, that's odd.
It is odd, because let's put it this way, you're going first. You're a subject to your own influence as others are. And by the way, it should be a two-way street. When you get the more conversational element, you'll be influenced as much by your interactions as they are, and that's exactly how it should work, right? But we're not quite at that stage at this point right now. But this is one of the ways how, what Chris's experience was in terms of you're finding a common ground or middle ground between what could be true and would be very useful to be true in order to have certain results arise, and having enough truth value to it in terms of your own belief in it that you can't be accused of faking it or lying or any of these other things that are socially inappropriate. You won't necessarily fall into sophism. You actually will end up believing these things yourself. It's part of what makes the process of living so interesting, right? In attempting to persuade someone else of something, you should be getting closer to a higher order of truthfulness yourself. And so both of you win. Isn't that kind of an interesting way? Now, think of it, the other way to think about this as well is, how could you come up with something you found so convincing if it wasn't already formed as a raw idea inside your unconscious somewhere already? Because after all, you only had 60 seconds, right? So this is another way of actually getting at stuff that you already have half formed in the back of your mind, but it hasn't fully emerged yet. And that's another way of getting to more truthfulness within yourself, but something that evolves. So well done. Any other comments or experiences you want to share here? All right. So can we accept this idea now that truthfulness, at least the way that, or reality, the way that most people experience it, is more mental habit than anything that's quote-unquote immutable and real? Yes? We're getting closer to that idea, at least. Notice how what would have been highly improbable or unlikely before we started this course is starting to get more acceptable as we go along. How many of you are firmly convinced of this idea already? Just hands up. How many of you find it plausible, interesting, you're not rejecting it, but you're not sure about it yet? Yeah? And by the way, it's as it should be. Give yourself time to experiment with this. Whether you believe in this idea fully yet or not is neither here nor there at this point. I'm going to encourage all of you to do the same thing. Whilst you're here, allow it to be true enough to carry on with the exercises we're doing. At the end of our process here, in other words, when you go home into your daily lives and so on, please reflect back on your experiences here and decide again, so that whatever decisions you make are outside of the process of influence we're having here. Allow me to influence you enough to have experiences from which you can make your own mind up at the end of this. Is that okay with you guys? So when you leave here and start having your own lives and all the rest of it, reflect back on what you've been doing here, and then decide for yourselves how much of this you will agree with in your own lives, how much of it doesn't fit, and hopefully it'll be somewhere in between. Okay? So now we've got this idea we're building up that truth is more of a mental habit, and we started off with the law of associations, right? And the kind of association or the principles we've been playing with. Here's some of the principles. We have the authority principle, right? We've got the idea of going first, the H+, and lots of other stuff which we're developing, but it's kind of linked to the idea of authority. And we've got this idea of agreement, the yes room inside the mind, right? These are some of the principles I've been working with so far. We've done something new now, haven't we? We've left the general sphere of agreement and moved into something else with those last few exercises, haven't we? What have we moved into? Any ideas? New ideas. In other words, it's not necessarily, we're still looking for agreement, but not necessarily in the same way. This principle we're looking for now, I call the piggyback principle. Basically, we're using the law of associations in order to make things that weren't true before true now, by associating them through things that were true. Think of it this way. Imagine you're a guard guarding an old-fashioned castle, and there's a big gate. And there's people passing in and out constantly, right? Your job is to keep certain ruffians or things out. So, a farmer comes in, he's got a thing full of cabbage, you go, what, this cabbage stuff, is he poison? You start investigating, you're testing it, should I reject this guy or not? It's a very different thinking style than if someone comes along, say another farmer with carrots, or turnips even better. Every loyal soldier knows what a turnip is. And you know this farmer because he's been in and out lots of times. So you're going to spend as much time checking his cart out as with the other ones? No. Chances are when he comes in, he goes, all right, Bill, yeah, go on, off you go. Right? Isn't that kind of the nature of things? So the piggyback principle basically says, if we're going to have agreement anyways, if that cart's going to roll in anyways, add something to the cart that isn't going to be looked at too closely, because it's going to go in right along with it, through the law of association. You get the idea? So you have a couple of ways of doing it. One simple way was simply through the power words, by linking ideas to things that weren't necessarily linked to before. Another way is to use this piggyback principle to attach it to things they're already agreeing with, to go from true to include plausible ideas, and then start including improbable ideas, which are now becoming more plausible as agreement is cycled through. You get the idea here? Yeah? Note we haven't finished yet. We haven't yet gone to the point of really convincing someone that they're going to drink more water and making them go, yes, I want more water. But we're beginning to break down those mindsets, right? So here's another law that we want to play with here. This is a long and complex way of saying it's the law of successive approximations. It sounds more complex than it is. It's really the idea of doing baby steps. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? If you try and stuff the whole thing in your mouth at once, what's likely to happen? You won't get very far, will you? But by consistently slicing a little bit off at a time, a couple of things will happen over a period of time. Number one, more and more the elephant disappears inside of you. Number two, your capacity to eat more elephant in each go increases, doesn't it? So the law of successive approximations basically is talking about using baby steps, but simultaneously built into this idea is that as your baby steps progress, they can become increasingly large steps. You experienced this, or at least half of you experienced this when we did the little beach trip thing, and the elephant turned up. That was a big step, wasn't it? Half of you accepted the idea. A third of you rejected the idea. And whatever was left in between kind of were like, yeah, I don't know about this. You get the idea here? So there's a rule of thumb. There's a good heuristic to think about. The deeper in trance they are, the less active the critical factor will be, the no part of the mind. The less active the critical factor is, the no part of the mind, the less plausible, or the lower the plausibility element of your suggestions have to be in order to be accepted. Which means when you begin an interaction with a highly critical person, you have to focus virtually exclusively on things that are absolutely true for them. When I talk about truths now, it has to be truths that are true for them, otherwise they're not truths anymore, right? And slowly you segue in with little hints of things that are plausible, but they're still highly probable, so they don't even notice that you've departed from truth to high probability. You get the idea? That begins to erode the critical factor even further. You can go from high probability to mere plausibility, to low probability, to improbability, to downright unlikely, to just plain wrong. But it still becomes right. You get how this whole idea process goes? But it is all directly related to two things. Number one, how switched off is the critical factor. It's never on or off. It's just more on or more off over time. And number two, how much agreement have you been collecting along the ways? You get the idea of this? So let's do another exercise now inside of your groups. I'm going to give you a long time now. I'm going to give you 2 minutes apiece. It's crazy long. You think when you actually see it, you'll go like, oh my God, this is what am I going to do with all this extra time? What I want you to do is go to town on this. Same exercise as before. We'll still stick with the idea of drinking water. And start off with, what's true. Start seeding in, just weaving in ideas that are merely plausible, but truths are still the general theme. Then go from plausible to more improbable, but then truths are still the general theme, and so on. Okay, you get the idea? That's your warm-up act. That's the first half, the first minute or so that you want to go through. Please remember to go first, your personal trance themes and squeezing the meaning. How many of you forgot those elements in the last few rounds? Hands up. It's all right, I understand. So just think about water. What the hell are you going to say with water? Is that relaxing? Is it exciting? I don't know. It expresses the emotional undertone of the idea. You know, we all want to drink water, don't we? What am I thinking of? Something pleasant? What am I telling you? How am I thinking of water? Hey, it's a really good idea to drink water, isn't it? My expression, my tonality starts showing a little dislike. Compare that to, I know that most people think that water is a little bit dull. Do you notice how mismatched? Am I saying it's dull? Am I saying it's dull? I'm beginning to see that something else is going on. You are now beginning to go to something very sophisticated where you're beginning to switch your communication. You're talking to the conscious mind one way and the unconscious mind another way, and that creates a whole picture that's something completely different. So same exercise, I want you to emphasize this idea of squeezing the meaning from your words by going first, as personal trancing and so on, with the end goal in mind, that at the end of this process, they'll want to drink a glass of water. I don't care whether or not you succeed, it's only 2 minutes. But that's the end goal you begin to build into your mind. The success factor is irrelevant, but it will help you to choose the appropriate emotional content to the words and suggestions that you're making. Feel free to use your power words, trance themes, and language softeners, and so on. For trance themes, however, this is the last piece I want to do. The last minute or so, you know, when you do your power words, you know, because you can relax, you can feel more comfortable, and so on and so forth. What I want you to do is select trance themes, emotional states, that if they were experiencing them whilst drinking water, would make them very likely to want to have more. Anyone here enjoy feeling mucky, dirty, unclean, you know, like a hot, sweaty day, and it's like, oh, it's just full of stuff? By the way, notice my tonality has already helped you decide that for you. Anyone enjoy that? Or do you prefer when you actually get a chance to finally do something even as simple as washing your hands in a sink? Notice the association begin to develop? Isn't that a relief? But it's still having a hot shower or bath, isn't that? We can get rid of all that grime. See where I'm going with this? Beginning to develop something here? Wouldn't it be great if you could feel as clean on the inside as on the out whenever you drank some water? Because think about it. Water exists, doesn't it? You see the cycle I'm going into? Water exists, does it not? And we all know that water is good for you. I mean, you're made of 70, 80% water, and some people say 90%. You're a big bag of water and bones. Without water, you won't exist very long, at least in this physical form. Most of what needs to work inside you needs water to be able to do that work. Which means, when you drink more water, you're actually cleaning out the machine on the inside, so it works better. Do you notice how I just made the link for you? Do you get the idea? I don't want to do too much of this right now because I'd rather you be creative about it than just copy something else. 2 minutes apiece. Start off with the general cycle you did before, which is, you know, true, plausible, implausible. Then start riffing around power words and trance themes in relationship to water, and specifically the idea that they will enjoy drinking water one way or another, for whatever reason you've decided. Off you go, folks, inside your groups. So welcome back. Let's have the mic ready. How do you guys do? How was that? Was that interesting? Anything interesting or surprising happening in your experiences, both as a hypnotist, but more importantly this time as a subject? What kind of things came up? Can I stand up? So we'll have the mic coming over here. Over here. He's taking a nice twisty route for some reason. If you guys can make a little bit of space in the back here, it'll make it easier for Jacob to come backwards and forwards.
I can't actually remember a lot of what was said, but I've got a dry mouth. Really so it works.
So don't worry, we'll be having a break soon. You can quench your thirst. Anyone else notice something like this happening? Put your hands up. Who else is sort of like yeah, you know what, this idea of water is beginning to get a little kind of appealing to me right now? Now notice, what we haven't said is, there's a gentleman behind you, just stand up and I'll find you. Notice what we have not said yet is this going to be a more permanent thing? Was this going to be something he does for life? No, there are other things that need to happen here. But for the moment, notice how we spent about, in total, by putting everything together we've been doing for the last few moments, in terms of actual trance time, you spent maybe about 5 minutes talking about water, essentially. And then within 5 minutes, we've got about half the room already basically wanting to drink some water. Would that be fair to say? Unless it's more than half the room and you just got too lazy thinking about, no, I need some water before I put my hand up. I'm not wasting any energy until I have some water at last. But isn't that interesting? What's happening here? I'll come to you in a minute if I may. What is happening here? Why does talking about water make you want it more? Well, on one level, we've got this idea of the law of associations, right? You're beginning to associate the idea of water and drinking it to very desirable things, positive emotions and so on. Important life functions, in other words, the absence of negative experiences and so on, right? On another one, though, on another level, and this is another thing that trance seems to work on in particular, this is what I call the law of attention, with an of in between. The way that a lot of you will come across in terms of what we've done before is the idea that where attention goes, energy flows. And by this energy, I don't mean some strange spiritual energy. That may be true also. But I'm talking about some purely physiological effect. You've all had days where you've done nothing physically, but it's been very mentally demanding. So you've just been thinking a lot. And you get pretty drained. You're physically drained at the end of that day, aren't you? So clearly, there is some form of energy system going on that allows you to think. You have a limited capacity of this energy. It can grow in time, but you still run out of it and you have to replenish it, right? Whether you want to think of that as glucose or synapses firing or whatever else you want to think of it as, it doesn't matter. The point is, for want of a better expression or more accurate description, there is some form of psychological energy going on that is involved in our psychological experience, right? When we put our attention on something, that energy goes towards that thing and tends to increase it. The quality of the attention that goes toward it is part of that, which is why people who are in pain become more painful, because they bring negative attention to it. It's like, yeah, I don't like that. As opposed to the more positive attention, like, for example, mindfulness works a lot with pain control, precisely because the quality of attention going to the pain has changed. I don't want to turn this into a pain control seminar. That's another specialty area. But you get the idea that I'm trying to talk about here. You experienced this for yourself earlier today when we were doing all the power words and the trance themes, did you not? Just by talking about comfort and relaxation and using the tonality of comfort and relaxation, which has the associations that are attached to it also, you started feeling more comfortable and relaxed because that's where all your psychological processes were being oriented towards. Get the idea? We've just taken the next step. We're now orienting that towards the idea of water being healthy, being good, being desirable. And what a way that you've been doing, and we use everything else as a supporting act, the piggyback principle, the agreement principle. These are all our mechanisms that are supporting the main idea, which is activating the law of associations and the law of attention. Put attention on water in a positive way, link it to positive things that the person finds desirable, and suddenly start creating a self-running machine, a mechanism that will turn towards that goal automatically. And most of you in this room are beginning to experience that in the sense of, yeah, just shut up, Ego, I want to drink some water. You get the idea? So thank you for that. Go ahead and stand up.
Yeah, hi. What I wanted to say was that when people say the truisms about water, I understand everything they say and I agree with it 100%, whether it's absolutely true or slightly true. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it doesn't really make me feel a lot more thirsty like I want to drink now. Mm-hmm. However, I know that on many occasions people have talked about salty stuff, hot spicy stuff, sweaty stuff, and then said, God, it makes you feel thirsty. So maybe truisms about stuff that makes you feel thirsty rather than truisms about water itself?
That is another way of enriching it. We haven't actually come on to the additional associations, right?
Yeah.
So absolutely, you've just figured another way out of creating conditions that make, remember, the key here was what will make water desirable,
Yeah.
right? I suppose your partners may focus on the idea of that water is good for you, it's healthy, and so on, and that may not be a desirable property for you, right? It may not be something that it gives you, has leverage. It's not motivating for you, right?
Yeah.
But avoiding the pain of thirst, of suffering from a dry, parched throat, of that salty taste in your mouth when you just won't go out,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. You eat salty peanuts. How does it make you feel?
Like, just talking about
Right, go
salty
and have a
peanuts
drink.
enough. You're going to have a drink now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But notice, yeah. Oh, yeah, me too. I'm like, whoo.
Exactly.
So notice what's going on here, right? Whether or not you succeeded with the last set of processes is irrelevant. The point here is important, which is you need some leverage that motivates them. If you want if you want to have short-term success, pain can be very motivating in the short term. Long-term, people can escape it long enough that they'll oscillate and vacillate. But having both ends, enough pain to get them started, and enough pleasure to keep them going, that's a very useful thing. If they fall back a bit, there's the pain to start them off again, and then when they keep going, there's enough pleasure to keep them going, and so on. You can get very tricksy in terms of those principles overall. What I'm more interested in right now, though, is just the raw mechanics, and can you engage in those things, right? And in doing so, you yourself will discover, just as you did there, that, you know what, this is really working out, but there's missing something. And if we start adding those missing elements, your machinery for persuasion becomes more and more robust, right? But again, we're still on training wheels here right now, so it's a good thing to notice these things, and we'll continue to evolve it as we go along. Any other things you noticed? Anything interesting? Bizarre, unusual, good? Great, well, I'm glad you had such a good time with this whole thing. So you get the idea of the law of successive approximation and the law of attention, right? What I'd like to do now is let's do one last exercise before we finish up. Let's take this idea of the law of attention and the law of association. Sorry, what was your name? This gentleman over here? What was your name? Yeah. Nigel? Nye, okay. So Nye noticed that there are more than one ways to skin this proverbial cat, right? That there are many things that will create desire other than just directly going after the desire. Which means you discovered another element to this idea of indirect suggestion. Then the heart of indirect suggestion is not so much the permissive kind of language we've been focusing on, but is actually using the law of association wisely, which is to ask yourself the question, what things are associated to the actual outcome that I want? So by talking around the outcome enough, it triggers associations so they spontaneously have the experience Nye did, which is to say, you know, if I only thought about peanuts, I would get damn thirsty right now. You get the idea? So the challenge for you is sticking within what you know, which is squeezing the meaning from your words. Who here is still remembering to have a personal chance in something very pleasant, or something unpleasant when talking about salty peanuts and so on? Power words, transients, and so on. I'd like you to start off again. We'll have another 2-minute process here. Start off again with this idea of just close your eyes, go into a trance, then a minute or so of things that are true. See, have you noticed how your things that are true have started evolving? They're not quite as clumsy anymore, are they? Anyone notice this? Right, they're getting a little bit more eloquent, a little bit more conversationally adroit. How did that happen? Any ideas? Or is it just the fact that you were so busy doing something new that your unconscious mind just made it better? because it fit better. You get the idea of how unconscious learning works? So continue with the same sort of process, and then at the end of it, we're going to go back to this idea of trance themes and power words and talking about the idea of water and so on. Only this time, I want you to precede it, go between one and the other, and in somewhere in that middle stage, I'd like you to talk about another kind of yes set, which we haven't really addressed, but you guys have been starting to play with, which are the category of universal experiences. They're experiences that pretty much everyone's had, right? Unless they have a nut allergy, salty peanuts is a big one, but anything salty, to be honest with you, is one of them, right? Everyone has had the experience of being dehydrated, being parched, either because it's a hot day, because of exercise too much, or a little bit of both, right? What I want you to do is go through a sequence, true, plausible, improbable, and all kind of mixed in a little bag. Then somewhere along the lines, tell a little story. It doesn't have to be a proper story, just a little anecdote of, or a simile, either when you or a friend or you remind them of that they had an experience where water was of great value, drinking water was of great value to them, typically because they were thirsty. But leave it hanging. Don't actually make anything of it. Then go back to the idea of trance themes and the idea of drinking water and all the positive things that come. And given that you only have, we'll give you a couple of, we'll give about 2 or 3 minutes for this apiece. And I want you to jump backwards between the experiences, the little mini stories, and the trance themes and the cycling, just backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. Doesn't have to be the same trance themes, doesn't have to be the same experiences, but you're going backwards between those two different kind of styles of thinking about something, and notice what impact that has on you. You may include, if you wish, the idea of alternative things that make water desirable, like you notice it what you want when you have an absence of it, being in a desert with no water. And also making it desirable in just in terms of, can you describe it in a way that is purely delightful? And maybe even combine the two together. That delicious sense of having a crisp, cool water that seems to have no taste at first, but then suddenly you realize it tastes like pure satisfaction. Doesn't that sound a little bit like marketing spiel? And the difference between that and by the way, this is why marketing spiel like that works, is when people are watching these adverts on TV in particular, they're going into hypnotic state or hypnoidal state. The flicker rate of the TV screen and all this sort of attention gathering. Have you ever noticed that when you're watching TV, you'd be watching a show, someone come in and talk to you, and you go, do you get that? And you go, huh? What? Did you come in? When did you come in? Or even better, you're watching TV and someone comes in, puts something right in front of you, leaves, and then after a while, maybe the break comes on, you turn the TV program off, you look down and go, where the hell did that come from? Anyone notice these sort of things happening? TV is deeply hypnotic, and that's one of the reasons why paying for adverts on TV, especially for big shows, is so expensive, because they work on the law of associations. When you're in a trance, you are much more, your ideas or your way of accepting these ideas tends to be much more enriched. So let's spend 2.5 minutes a piece, so 5 minutes in total, doing the whole piece. And what we're adding here in the middle is these universal experiences related to the pleasures of drinking water or the undesirability of not drinking water. This is about as broad as I can make it. And then oscillate between those universal experiences and then this general trance themes, water's good, you'll feel this way when water happens. Because water does this, you will feel that. Link emotions to some kind of plausibility logic to the idea of water. Do you see the little scenario we're creating there? Do you get the idea of what we're doing? Yes?
Can you actually just repeat the concept?
Sure.
Yeah, because I'm just...
And again, don't worry too much about how much of this you're doing. You have 2.5 minutes. First minute or so is the classic thing you already did, which is true, plausible, and probable. Same thing as you did before. Easy. Step 2, some kind of universal experience, either about the pleasure of drinking water or the pain of not drinking it. Salty things would be the pain of not drinking it. Drinking it when you haven't had a chance to is the pleasure of having it, right? Or even, having too much chocolate or sweets in your mouth is like craving something. You drink water, it goes away, that sort of thing. Then, step 3, cycle between the trance themes and the universal experiences. When we talk about trance themes specifically, I want you to cycle between the 3 ideas. Water, a logical reason why water is good for you, and an emotional factor that makes it emotionally appealing. So it's healthy and it feels good, is an example, but not the only one, right? It makes you think better, it makes you smarter, and it'll make you feel stronger and more energetic. Those are totally different reasons and different emotions, feelings, yet they still have that desirability to them. You get the idea? Go ahead, just a quick question over here. Can we have the mic over here, please?
I'm a bit worried that we are doing this all exercises in trance because I'm a hypno junkie, and when somebody told me close your eyes, go into trance, I'm in deep trance and I'm in the yes room, and I
so far, so good.
Yes, but I do not notice any contrast and
A contrast of what?
Of being in that no room, and
Right.
I don't see the trip from
This is
one
the
place
subject
to
or as a hypnotist?
What?
As a subject or as a hypnotist?
As a subject.
Great. Well, in that case, you're doing the great job being a hypnotic subject.
Okay.
Right? If you really want to have a contrast of what happens when those come in, then you're welcome to ask your hypnotist, if they're willing to, because they want to might want to trade in the success element, to just throw in a few things that are just going to mess it up on purpose, so you can have a contrast to it. Okay. So you have a choice. You can do this exercise any way you wish. On the one way, you're developing certain patterns that will help you be more influential. On the other one, you'll develop contrast to what happens when you don't have those patterns in place well enough. It's your choice which you choose.
Okay, thanks.
And it's your hypnotist's choice whether or not he wants to do it. And remember, when we finish up here, which we'll do after this exercise, you can always grab any hypnotist in the room and say, hey, let's practice some more. And then you can actually do all those things you haven't had a chance to do here yet. That make sense?
Yes, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, guys. Use the same partner as the last time, it just makes it easier. 2.5 minutes apiece, 5 in total, off you go. How did that go? Did you enjoy it? How was that different, including this idea of universal experiences and contrasting, going from trance themes and universal experiences? What kind of things did you notice? Or is it just, don't make me talk, I've had a day of trance and... Can I stand on up? We'll get that mic to you. Just stand up, it'll be easier for him to find you otherwise. You'll be hidden otherwise.
Hi. I just noticed that it just felt so real. It just felt like I was really there.
So when you're the subject, it feels much more real, right?
Yeah, and in fact, I think you noticed that I started licking my lips by about 10 seconds in, and I really did want that drink of water. So
right.
Yeah.
So excellent. Good job as a hypnotist. Go ahead.
I would like to add to it that the universal experience also creates sort of a mini bond with the other person, because you can feel their thirst and their feeling and the relief when they then finally get water.
Yep.
You go with them, so you're more willing to listen to them.
Absolutely. And makes it more real, right? So notice how there's different qualities of yes sets over here in the back. Jakob, just stand up and I'll find you. There's different qualities of yes sets which have different levels of realness, right? And who is starting to feel like, yeah, you know what, admittedly you've been in a day of trance, so you're a little bit more in the trance zone anyways. By the way, who is still pretending to go into a trance, anyone? Or you've just given up an idea long ago because it's much more fun doing it? It's much more interesting here, right? The other thing to ask yourself is, how natural does it feel being in this state what we'll call trance for now? Pretty natural, doesn't it? For those of you who weren't hypnotists before you came here, aside from the fact that your eyes were closed, and may feel a little lethargic over it, would you have said you were in a trance if something like that had happened in a regular conversation? We just said, hang on a second, was I in a trance just now? Or we just thought, no, it was just a very engaging conversation. It became very real for me, right? This is one of the ways that we can use the very problem that most hypnotists and hypnotherapists in particular run into. I heard everything you said, therefore it can't have worked. And we can make it serve us as conversational hypnotists because they'll never know it's happened. If you do something that gives them an idea that something's happened, well then you can still do good work with it, but the chances are they'll go, well, something's happened, and they're a little bit more alert for it. If they have no idea that something's happened other than that you're just a fascinating person to talk to, great. Carry on. You'll have a long, healthy career as a covert hypnotist. Get the idea? So go ahead, please.
Before this exercise, I was afraid because there was a few things to do in that, but I realized after when I was doing this that it was like a wave. You just finish a story, then then emotion, and the story, then which means of and the emotion, and it was easy.
I agree. I agree. So notice how, are you beginning to develop your own personal metaphor for what it feels like to do hypnotic work, especially in this sort of style? There's a lot of little moving parts, isn't there? But when you let go of them for long enough to actually do it, how easy is it? Especially when you get that mindset first. Isn't it pretty easy and straightforward? But just think about the stuff you've been doing. Think about this. Look what you've been doing in one day. Well, closing the eyes, that's easy. Trance signals, ratifying things that are happening. You've got the voice tones of authority, H+. Your hypnotic voice is starting to develop more and more. You have some hypnotic thoughts which develop as we go along. We're getting some involuntary and voluntary responses. We'll talk more about that tomorrow again. Your language has improved significantly, wouldn't you say? Your language softeners, your power words, your trance themes. You have a much richer sense of what trance seems to use. This idea of going first and getting more out of your language is getting more, it's getting increasingly easy now. So we may as well put this one here. So what's true versus what is merely true is starting to make much more sense to you now as well. Would that be fair to say? Then we have lots of ways of getting a yes set. So far, we have a simple fact, right? And we've just played now with universal experiences, which is kind of the opening framework for a story. We haven't really gone into storytelling fully, but it's the opening gambit for a story anyways, right? It's pretty easy to do, isn't it? So you've covered a lot of stuff. You've covered a lot of different laws, principles, language, all kinds of stuff in a day. Does it feel like you've been here a day so far? A week, right? No time distortion there, right? You've done a lot of work. And assuming you decided not to think too much about it, I suspect each step along this path was actually very easy for you to do, simple. From time to time, you fell off the path by trying to do too much. And you confused yourself by thinking about it like, oh, I don't know how to put this all together and how to make it work. And that's really just the wrong mindset. Because as soon as you remembered that you were in the wrong room inside your mind and you left, coming back to the agreement room, the yes room, well, something else began to happen, didn't it? Not only did you start feeling better, but words would begin to come that you didn't even know you had inside of you. And once we took a few of the training wheels off and started working with something slightly practical, and by the way, it's still impractical for now, but it's getting more practical, is it not? You started having some very interesting impacts. Number one, the general thirst level in the room has risen dramatically, has it not? Number two, you discovered how doing a lot of these things you've been learning about today starts coming out naturally and automatically when you give it a right context. You're starting to get more strategic about it. You're developing strategies you didn't even know you had, like using salty things, the association to thirst, as opposed to just the association to water. Notice a distinction that is there. More important than any of this is that fact that you have had a lifetime of experiences working with people, talking with people, interacting with other human beings. Whether English is your first language or not, you do understand the general language of conversations, the give and take. You have many experiences with people, both experiences you find satisfying and rewarding and useful, and the other kind. If you were to close your eyes for a moment and think about it, I mean, really think about it. I'm sure you would discover more inside of you than just comfort. As deep as that comfort can get. The thing that's more important than that is the fact that you can learn comfortably. And in a strange way, you can feel comfortable learning something even if in that one brief moment there is some momentary discomfort that you overcome comfortably to get to the other side. Now I realize that not all your learning experiences in the past have been this comfortable. The best ones have, and better ones are yet to come. Because as you study and practice hypnosis, with the principle of going first, your ability to access things like comfort, relaxation, inner peace, qualities that are of great value to experience in a trance. You not only enrich your own life, you enrich your capacity to learn more things more comfortably. Some of the most comfortable learning you've ever experienced happened when you didn't even realize you were learning. The kind of unconscious, implicit learning that happens automatically. You may have a favorite piece of music, a favorite walk in a favorite park, a pleasant activity that you enjoy just for the pleasure of doing it, reading, writing, painting, singing. How did you learn to enjoy those activities? Where did the comfort and the pleasure of those things come from? If not from your unconscious mind, you just did it. And because you enjoyed doing it, you did more. So you enjoyed it more. And in enjoying it more, weren't you deeply motivated to keep doing it again and again? And so your capacity to have enjoyment increased. That wonderful piece of music that you really listened to became something you could appreciate on many more levels. That walk you enjoy taking now becomes your refuge. Something you can return to time and again when you need a resource in your life. It is a great example of unconscious learning in action. Today, as hectic as things have become, as tired as you may have been throughout the course of the day, you've been learning consistently. You've acquired skills you did not have before you came here. Or even you've understood aspects of them. You've deepened those skills, making you a better hypnotist and a better person. Now, the most important part of the learning cycle is embedding unconscious experience into unconscious memories that become the source of all true unconscious learnings. You've had many experiences here today. And because you've had these experiences, I wonder just how they'll affect your dream time tonight. All of you will dream, whether you remember them or not. It is a physiological fact that human beings dream. They must dream to stay sane. Though many people are convinced they had no dreams because they forgot about them. And I don't know if you remember your dreams or not, or if you just remember having had dreams without realizing the content. What I do know is, whatever dreams may come for you will be an opportunity for your unconscious mind to process experiences into memories and learnings that will be the foundation on your path to mastery of hypnosis and influence and being a force for good in the world. Now, the thing about dreaming is, it can only happen if you've been awake long enough beforehand to go to sleep. So ironically, you've got to wake up now in order to be able to enjoy the dreams then, right? So as soon as you're ready to do that now, feel free to bring yourself back. Anyone driving a car today? So the rest of you feel free to ignore this. But wherever your car happens to be parked right now, you realize that as soon as you go from this room outside, you've already changed atmospheres, right? Now, the more important thing about changing atmospheres, not so much the one between here and the outside corridor, or even the lobby. The really interesting one is what happens when you go outside and you go from the temperature in here to that really cool, brisk air of London, which goes, ooh, I'm invigorated. Now, I don't know if your car's going to be cool enough when you open the door that you'll be able to start your engine and go, I'm going to drive totally confidently and comfortably and fully alert on the way home. Or it'll feel like the car window's open whether it is or not. Just so that you have that fresh breeze blowing through your mind all the way until you get home. And then you get to decide when is the right time for you to sleep, the one that has the dreams that you're looking forward to. Does that make sense to you guys? Have a good night.